Everybody asks me, what do I want to be doing in 5 years? I wish a lot more people would ask me, who do I want to become in 5 years? And that's kind of that really stuck with me of saying,
Yeah.
the only way you're answering that question is if you're taking time to really just have a vision for your life and say, man, who is the person that I want to become? What do I feel like God has called me to do? Because it can be so easy to just get so caught up in the grind of life.
What's going on, and welcome to the Take a Step podcast. I'm your host, Josh Johnston, founder of Take a Step. It's a community that's focused on bringing together like-minded individuals who are all purpose-driven towards taking action to maximize their God-given potential. If you find value in this podcast, please leave a rating and review on whichever platform you're listening. It really helps us to continue to grow this community and change more lives for the better. Feel free to give me a follow on social media at _ take a step _ and reach out to me if you have any questions or just want to connect. With that being said, let's dive in. Ladies and gentlemen, today is a good day. Welcome back to another episode of the Take a Step podcast. Today's a good day because we are blessed to have Shane Smith on the podcast today. One of my good buddies back from that I met back in college. Shane, thank you so much for joining today. Happy to have you on.
Yeah, man. So excited to be here. Grateful and honored that you would ask me to be a part of what's happening with the Take a Step community, and excited to hang out a little bit today.
Yeah, definitely. So for some context, and I know I'll let you go into it in a second, but Shane and I met back in college. We played college baseball together. But Shane, I want to open it up to you just to kind of introduce yourself however it makes sense to you. So Shane, floor is yours.
Yeah. So like Josh said, he and I met in college, played baseball together. He was a lot better than me, but enjoyed our friendship that was developed over those years. But yeah, I have grown up in Georgia, been around Metro Atlanta area throughout my life. Currently serve in student ministry at a church outside of Atlanta. Been here for about 4 years and love what I get to do there. My wife and I, we have been married for coming up on 3 years now. We were high school sweethearts, as they say. So we started dating my junior year of high school, dated for about 7 years, and then got married. And now, yeah, living in Metro Atlanta, working at our church. Mackenzie has a hair and makeup business that she's just crushing at. Really proud of all the work that she's putting into that, and love getting to do stuff like this. Love getting to speak in front of people, and love just the opportunity to invest in relationships that mean a lot to me. And Josh is one of those. So that is a little bit about me.
Love it. Awesome. So I want to just kind of go back. I know it's kind of been a while. Every time we get together, I feel like we can just ramble on about what happened back in college. But I'd love to hear from you. You know, what are when you look back on our college days, you know, playing for the Truett McConnell Bears up in Cleveland, Georgia.
Yes, go Bears.
What are some memories that come to mind?
Yeah, wow. I mean, I college sports are just so fun, and it's so hard at the same time, you know? Like, I think when me and you started our freshman year, I'm pretty sure there was like 19 other guys that
Yeah.
were in our freshman class. And when we graduated, there were six of us. And
Yeah.
so just the grind of it, I feel like taught me so much of just what it means to be on a team and things like that. But I mean, more than that, just like the fun memories of just the friendships that come from it. Because, you know, I mean, you're with those guys like pretty much every waking hour of every day. You're either in early morning workouts with them, or living with them in your dorm room, or at practice, or homework, whatever it is. Like, you're with those guys all the time. So yeah, just so many good friendships that were formed, all of that. I'd say one memory that comes to mind, and I think about this every now and then. I remember might have been our senior year. We were playing like a preseason game against a college down the road. And I remember during batting practice, I mean, you were just hitting home run after home run. I mean, it was just fun to watch. It was just like, wow, Josh is putting on a show right now during batting
Okay,
practice.
easy.
And there was one, I don't know if it was someone's dad from the other team or something, but he was there watching batting practice behind me. And it was just the way he said it that got me. He just um, turned to somebody next to him and he said, "Anybody know who number two on their team is?" Because you were just like hitting so well during batting practice. And I just watched that whole scene play out. Like I felt like a spectator just watching all of that. And I was just like, man, I'm never going to be able to hit baseballs that far. Like there's just
Oh my
something about
gosh.
that
Well,
that is just
speaking of
so epic.
bombs, we'll relive another memory. It's our freshman year. And we get, like you said, at the end of every fall, we always inter squad just a local college team. And you go through the fall and you're kind of like figuring out the skill level and the talent level of everyone else on that came in your freshman class, and obviously the other guys that are sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and so we're feeling each other out. And I mean, Shane has a pretty solid fall, and I mean, to be honest, nothing that's like wows you and you're like, oh, this guy's going to be a stud.
Yeah, middle of the pack guy.
But then we get into our fall game, and later in the game, Shane gets put in for a pinch hit at bat, and out of nowhere, first pitch, all of a sudden, Shane turns into, he's playing third base, just decides to put 10 on his back and be Chipper Jones for a second. First pitch bomb over the left field wall. We're like, all right, I guess Shane's just that guy. And I don't think we saw that again for the next 4 years.
No, that was it. That was the one. That was the one. Dude, I'm so glad you brought that up because that's one of those things like you don't want to be the guy that brings up his one home run, but it kind of feels good to talk about it.
Oh, it was a bomb. It was a bomb.
And yeah, I mean, that was mind you, that's my first college at bat for one. Didn't hit any home runs in high school. Didn't hit another one in college. And so my whole mindset is just like, look like you've done this before, just like the way that, but inside, I think I was just as surprised as anyone at what had just transpired. And yeah, dude, that was so much fun. I kind of had that moment of like, oh, have I, we've been working out a lot here. Has something changed? Like, am I like that now?
This is just who you are now.
Yeah. Yeah. But then, no, went back to being a role guy after that.
I mean, the funny part about it is it was like, it's late in the game. It's a fall game. It's getting cold. People are starting to like kind of lose attention. And
I'm pretty sure we played like an 18-inning game that day.
Yeah. People are starting to get pinch hit at bats, and we're sitting there in the dugout, just kind of like hanging out, talking with our buddies, and out of nowhere, bam! And it was like, oh, what is going on here?
Yeah.
But no, I always that's one of my favorite memories. Just like remembering back, and especially that it was our first year. We're just kind of getting to know each other.
It was so fun, dude.
And I know I feel like I text you like every
now
once
and then
in a while. Like, hey, buddy, you remember that bomb you hit against Toccoa like 8 years ago? You're like, yeah, I think about it once a week minimum.
Yes, dude, that is so real. And yeah, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. And I look back at those days of playing together, just so thankful they happened. And yeah, those memories and stuff are so fun, but just the relationships that come from it mean so much more,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And like going off of what you were saying originally to the question is like the ability to kind of come in with 19 other guys and leave with 6 over the course of 4 years. I think it's a testament to people just willing to, withstand the grind. And if you can do that with a core group of guys, you have no choice but to grow, super close. And I also think doing it at a smaller school. I talk about this with people that ask, I think it's easier to come in whether you play or don't play to last 4 years at, for example, at Georgia because you get the clout, you get the notoriety, all the amenities that come with the program. But to go to Cleveland, Georgia, population maybe 1,000 people, and then, be able to be there with 4 years because you love the team, you love the game, you love each other. It's just a testament to being able to, have that relentlessness and just grinding out the 4 years together. And I think we grew super close because of that.
100%. Yeah.
Mhm.
Couldn't agree with you more there. I think yeah, it takes knowing how to be a part of a team and be just all in for the guys that you're competing with to really be able to last and do it in a way where you look back and think, man, I enjoyed that time in my life so much.
Yeah, definitely. I was gonna ask, like, what for you, like, what are some of your bigger life takeaways from just from college athletics, college baseball that you kind of have been able to take and implement into your life that's been able to, be an asset for you? Would you
Hmm.
say that's one of them is being a part of a team?
Yeah, 100%. I think like, all throughout life, we're going to find ourselves on different teams, whether it's for the business that you work for and you're part of the accounting team, whether it's, working at a church and you're part of this team, whether it's your family and you have team dynamics of your family
Mm,
where you have to learn how to communicate with each other. You have to learn like who's going to take what roles, all of that type of stuff. At the heart of it is being a part of a team. And really, I think that probably the biggest thing that I noticed that what really got formed in me from being a part of a team in college is, you kind of get to college and you realize everybody's just as good or better than you at your sport. Like it's
mm,
you grow up and maybe if you get to a place where you're able to play in college, you probably played pretty well growing up, but it's a pretty even playing field in college, and reality can kick in pretty fast. And so what I noticed for me when I got to college was if my contentment and my just inner peace is based on how well I'm performing on this team, then it's going to be a pretty miserable experience just because
mm.
I'm going to have limited at bats. I'm going to have, limited playing time, whatever it is. And so if that's what my contentment in life is based on, and I'm finding my identity in being a college baseball player, then it's going to be hard to make it 4 years here just because I'm not going to be, um, you know, somebody that's going to be a starter every single day, stuff like that. And so, really, what I learned throughout college that I think still sticks with me today is if you live with this, like, me at the center of my life attitude, then you're probably going to find yourself in a lot of situations where you're not going to be satisfied and you're not going to be content with where you're at in life. And so, what happened to me during college is I realized, okay, if I'm going to enjoy this and I'm going to um, last here all 4 years. It's going to take me really doing it with a different purpose than just trying to perform well. Of course, I'm going to do my best and I'm going to perform to the best of my ability, but I really want to be somebody who's selfless, somebody who's servant-hearted, and somebody who is putting the team above myself. And it's kind of that whole like we greater than me
Mm.
mentality where I
Yeah.
feel like I was able to um, really take that on throughout my college years, and it made me be able to look back on it and think, man, I really enjoyed that. And it wasn't because of how well I performed on the field or anything like that. It was just because of the relationships that were formed. I feel like I was able to pour into other guys on the team in a way that was meaningful and impactful for them. And really, all of that just came from saying, okay, I'm not going to operate with myself at the center of my life. For me, my life is really all about my faith. So I'm going to operate with Jesus at the center of my life,
Mm.
and that's going to impact how I serve the people around me, because that's the model we see that Jesus set. And so that's really what I feel like I got out of those college years and being on a college team is what it really means to live with that we greater than me kind of selfless attitude.
Got it. Yeah. No, that's a great way to put it. Mine's honestly very similar in the sense of, deriving from that we greater than me. For me, I view it as like finding my identity. I think,
Hmm.
so many people that are kind of in that phase of life, growing into, being a new adult. I think there's an identity crisis in the world today. And for me, I was definitely a victim of that. And, I recently I've kind of coined my own definition for identity, and I'd love to get your take on it. The way I define identity is the source at which I find my purpose that drives the actions that I take.
It's great.
So for me, like you were saying, it's so hard to if you find your peace and joy from your performance, and it's all about what you're doing, then that's so it's not a firm foundation to place your identity in, right? And for me, like when I had good games, I was great. I was fun to be around. I was nice to my other teammates, my family, everyone. I was great to be around when I was playing well. But because my identity was placed in my performance early on in college and back into high school and just growing up, it caused a lot of unrest within my soul, because I was constantly, like, especially in baseball, it's a game of failure. The best players in the world. I mean, everybody here's the best players in the world step up to the plate and fail 7 out of 10 times if you're the best. So for me, I went through a lot of ebbs and flows just in my inner peace, because my identity was placed in my performance. And throughout college, through relationships like you, through being plugged into a culture that pushed, developing a faith of our own, I was able to really find my identity in Jesus, like you were talking about, because I know that's an unchanging foundation to place your identity in. It's not something that's gonna evolve over time like my performance will. No matter how good you get at something, especially a sport, a career, you're always gonna have challenges. You're always gonna have hardships, and Jesus tells us that. Just because we place our faith in Him doesn't mean times are gonna get easier. But placing our identity in Him, knowing that He's the firm foundation that I lay my life on, it gives me that joy, that peace to kind of go through every day, knowing that my identity is set in something that's unchanging. And that's something that I was really able to take away from our college experience playing baseball, which is very unique to where we were, the people we were surrounded with. So I'm tremendously blessed and thankful to have been a part of that growing up and in college. So I'm sure you kind of have a similar experience that kind of shaped you and molded your faith and kind of the direction of your life as you were at Truett.
Yeah, that's so great. And yeah, I would just say just being able to kind of watch you go through that maybe transformation over our college years was so inspiring to me. Just seeing freshman Josh and senior Josh, I just saw you really grow so much, and saw you grow so much in your relationship with the Lord, and how that impacted your peace, contentment, all of those things 100%. Yeah, I think the word that you kept saying there that really stood out to me, that I resonate with a lot, is that word unchanging. I think when we're talking about what are we going to find our identity in, it needs to be in something that we know isn't going to be changing with the times. Like I don't know who said it first, but sometimes people will say, like, one thing you can be sure of in life is change. And I think that's so true. And so for me and for us, I think it's helpful to ask the question, like, well, what's something that doesn't change? And there's a verse in Hebrews chapter 13 where it just says Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so for us, if we're going to try to find our identity in something unchanging, Jesus is the answer to that. And that means that when times get hard, because they're going to be challenging, and when maybe we're not performing at the level that we want to be, maybe we don't feel like we're far along in our job as we want to be at a certain time, whatever it is, like, what's that thing that we go back to that's unchanging? There's this word they use in Scripture sometimes that it talks about Jesus being the cornerstone. And that visual of a cornerstone has been really helpful for me as of late. If you don't know what a cornerstone is, it's pretty self-explanatory. If you just think about a building being built, and at the very corner of one of the buildings, there would be a stone that would be set into place. And really every other part of the building is dependent on that stone. So like every measurement, every line, if things are going to be built straight, all of those things are dependent on that stone being in the right place. And I think so often in our lives, we can find different things to try to put at the cornerstone of our lives, whether it's like we've been talking about, if it's sports, things like that, if it's our job, if it's being liked by other people. And whenever we get those things in the position of the cornerstone, we'll eventually meet a point in life where it's like, okay, this isn't making sense. Like this isn't working. And when we put Jesus in his proper place as the cornerstone of our lives, I think that's where we start to get to a place where we understand, like, okay, this is why I'm here. Like, this is my purpose. This is where things start to line up. This is where buildings aren't looking as crooked as they once were because they're built on something that can hold the weight of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I just think about that. Been thinking about it more and more lately of if I don't have the cornerstone of my life properly found in the person of Jesus Christ, then things are going to come up that are going to disrupt my peace, that are going to make me discontent, that are going to find me scrambling for answers. But if I can just find in the person of Jesus, that's where we start to find that inner peace. And that doesn't mean we'll have all the answers. It actually means like we're going to walk by faith a lot, and but we're doing it just according to a different reality than operating by the way the world works. We're operating by the way the kingdom of God works. And so, yeah, that's what comes to mind for me when you start thinking about that idea of what are we finding our identity in.
Man, that's so great. And one of my favorite verses coming to mind because it alludes to this so perfectly, because we're talking about peace. We're talking about, the hardships that we're going to face that are, we can't get away from the trials and tribulations. But my favorite verse is John 16:33, where Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he says, guys, I tell you these things so that in me you may have peace. But in this world you will experience trials and tribulations, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And I feel like that sums up what we're saying so well, because, he's pointing everything back to him. Take heart, I have overcome the world. So like for me, it resonates so perfectly when I talk about placing my identity in that firm foundation. Take heart because he's overcome the world. And he also, obviously tells us, guys, you're going to have hardships. You're going to have trials. You're going to have tribulations. So the idea of placing your faith and identity in him to make your life easier is a flawed view of Christianity in general. But for me, I don't do it to make my life easier. I do it because I know good times or bad times, my identity is secure. My inner peace is set no matter what situation I'm walking through. So that's what that verse comes to mind as we kind of talk about that. But I love the depiction of the cornerstone, because not only is it unchanging, another thing that comes to mind is just strength. The cornerstone. There has to be strength in that stone to secure the rest of the structure, right? And I think that's so true with Jesus. Is like, this gets into a whole nother conversation. I feel like in our society today, I heard this on another podcast. I think his name's Kyle Thompson, the Undaunted Life podcast. I don't know if you've heard of it, but he was talking about how our society is so fixated on the imagery of the Lamb of God when talking about the imagery of Jesus, and we kind of deter away from the Lion of Judah. So I think we get so caught up in like the softness, the gentleness, the love, which is all 100% true, and God is fully, love. But I think at the same time we get away from the strength and the might and that comes with the presence of God. And I think that's something that kind of resonated with me, because I think in my life, I always kind of associated the nature of Jesus and my faith with more of a feminine association. I don't know why. Maybe it's because my mom was kind of the faith leader in my house. Maybe that had something to do with it. Mm-hmm. But for me, I think I lacked a lot of like that strength that comes with your faith, and thinking about the idea of the cornerstone, understanding that that's the stone that kind of secures the structure all together. It just kind of puts a good picture in my mind for, both a combination of unchanging and also kind of the strength that holds everything together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think, one way that has been helpful for me in the past to think about, like, what am I finding my identity in right now, is to ask myself the question, when things get hard, what's the first thing I run to? So when something comes up that I am not expecting, or something comes up that is a challenge, what's the first thing that you run to? And for so many people, different things may come to mind when you hear that. It might be, well, let me just try to disconnect and just scroll away for hours on my phone, whatever that might be. Let me
Yeah.
just try to turn on a Netflix show and just kind of tune out for a little bit. Um, but really what we see in the person of Jesus is that he's strong enough to hold whatever that challenge is that is coming up in life, and we can go to him. I love, there's a verse, 1 Peter 5:7, cast all your anxieties on him because he cares for you.
Mm.
And he's so, yeah, he's intimate enough with us to care for us in the midst of whatever it is, but he's strong enough at the same time to hold all of those things, and we can bring those burdens to him. And he is the best place to go whenever life gets hard because, like we said, he's strong enough to hold it. He's compassionate enough to want us to come to him, and he is never changing, and he's always there.
Mm-hmm. Love it. So what led you into ministry? I know. Looking back in college, I remember just kind of always having the understanding. We all knew, like, yeah, Shane's that's his career path. That's what he's called to do, and we all know it, and it was so apparent. But for you, I mean, I don't think we ever really kind of went deep in your background on what was your why behind it. But what ultimately led you to ministry? Obviously, I'm sure you felt a calling to it at some point. But I'd love to hear you talk on that.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question. It was really um, my junior year of high school, kind of sophomore, junior year, was really a time in my life where I had been following Jesus for a few years, but the Lord just started to do more stuff in my life during that time. There's a guy that was a little bit older than me on my basketball team my sophomore year, and I remember he invited me to go to this worship service with him on Thursday nights, and we would do that together. And we go to Subway before sometimes and hang out and talk about what it means to follow Jesus and things like that. And it was really during that stretch where I felt like the Lord first started to maybe put ministry on my heart. It actually happened at one of those worship services. I remember somebody came up to me, and I didn't know the person, but they just said to me like, "Hey, I just feel like the Lord wants me to tell you that you're going to be a voice to the next generation." And that's all the person said. And at the moment, I didn't really think all that much of it. But I had already been thinking about ministry a little bit. And then this person randomly came up to me and said that. And so then I just started praying into that a little bit more of, man, what does it look like to be a voice to the next generation? And what could that possibly mean? And as I started praying about that and just asking the Lord more and more for direction in my life, it just became really apparent to me that working in a local church was something that I felt like God was calling me to do. And I think one just kind of big way to help maybe clarify your calling is just to invite feedback along the way of, hey, this is what I feel like is happening in my life. Do you see this in me as well?
Mm.
And so I started saying yes to a lot of different internships, working at churches and things like that. And the more and more I was working at local churches in different roles, I felt more and more affirmed in the calling that God had put upon my life. And more people also affirmed that calling, that saying, hey, I see this in you. I see this gifting in you. Keep going, keep pressing on. And I eventually got to a point where I felt like doing anything else would have been disobedient. It was like the more and more I said yes to what I felt like God was calling me to do, it almost got to where like I couldn't really imagine in that season of my life and today like doing anything other than working at a local church, just because I feel like that's what God has called me to do. And along the way, I've just been so grateful for the way I've just been able to get a super small glimpse and just play a super small part in what God's doing here in the Metro Atlanta area and the lives of students. And so, yeah, that's a little bit of my kind of direction path. I got to a point towards the end of my senior year of high school where the only option that I had on the table to where I could do both, study theology and also play baseball, was at Truett. And so it made the option pretty easy for me. It was like, man, I want to play baseball in college. I feel like God's calling me to ministry, and both those things overlap here. And then after that, eventually got connected to the church that I'm at now, and just so thankful for that journey of what the Lord's done throughout it.
So you're currently working with students. It's high school students, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Awesome. Do you want to is that kind of your long-term vision as far as staying in the student ministry, or what's your growth plan as far as how you evolve with the church?
Yeah, really right now I just want to be obedient to what's in front of me. I Something that has been huge for me lately, and maybe it might be helpful to talk about this for a minute, is rather than asking the question so much of what am I doing, like asking the question, who am I becoming? And if I'm focusing on the question of who I'm becoming, I think the doing um, will take care of itself, And so, yeah, right now, just really trying to be obedient with what the Lord's put in front of me in this season. And I have such a heart for students, such a heart for the next generation. Like I said, while I was sharing my story, um, really some of the major growth in my life happened in high school because somebody who was kind of a couple steps ahead of me um, really poured into me and invested in me. And I really feel like it's a calling upon my life to now kind of do that for people, just to
Yeah.
maybe be a couple steps ahead of them and say, "This is what I see in you," and just kind of call them to what the Lord may be calling them into, and just helping them discover their God-given purpose in their
Yeah,
lives.
and I think I love that question. It's what am I instead of what am I doing, who am I becoming? I think that's a really cool framework that I know I can take, but so many people can take. But I'd love to dive into that. So, for example, if like what would be the two differences in those answers? Like for you, if you were to answer the question, what am I doing? And then also answer the question, who am I becoming? How would you answer those differently? And like, how would that change
Hmm.
your outlook on the, I guess, the direction of your life?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. And I would say, when you think about what am I doing, it can come back to like, okay, I'm, you know, preparing sermons, helping plan gatherings, helping, yeah, responding to emails. Like all of these things are
Yeah.
things that I'm doing. But what does it look like instead of to say, okay, I want to be somebody who, preaches to this many people, which is very much a doing thing. What if the goal is instead of saying that, I want to become a trusted voice? That's like saying like, okay, that's becoming a trusted voice is something that that's more of like an identity statement of
Yeah.
saying this is who I'm becoming. And so it really sets a different goal on the table of saying rather than maybe preaching to this many people or whatever that might be, saying, man, I want to become a trusted voice, or rather than saying like, you know even in my marriage and things like that, like, yeah, rather than saying I want to do this many random acts of kindness for my wife, which that's a great goal, and you should do random acts of kindness for your life. Saying, man, I want to become a loving husband. I want to be somebody who's a caring, loving husband that's emotionally present for my wife each and every day, and that is there and prepared to help serve her in any way that I can. So I think it just kind of shifts maybe the heart behind why you're doing what you're doing. And the thing is, like both of those things might look the same on the surface, like if I have a goal of doing XYZ, it might look the same as saying, yeah, I want to become a trusted voice. Like on the surface, it could look so similar,
Yeah.
but the heart behind why you're doing it, and just the purpose behind why you're doing it, I think can look so different underneath the surface.
Yeah. One of the things I wrote down that I took away from that is it's the difference between focusing on the action versus using your answer as a filter. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
for example, I think the question of, what am I doing or what do I want to do? I think that puts a lot of emphasis on the actions that you're actually taking, where you're so like hyper focused on the action, it kind of like detaches your mind from thinking about the bigger picture. But if you're
Yeah.
thinking about who am I becoming, something like I want to be a loving husband, something I want to be a trusted voice, using that statement as a filter that drives the actions that you take. I
Yeah.
think I think it allows you to kind of keep the main thing,
Mm-hmm.
and look at the bigger picture. Think about the team rather than yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think that's
Yeah.
a powerful way to a powerful framework to use to kind of twist the same idea, the same ideology that people take and when they're trying to think about what they're doing or why they're doing something or the direction they want to go in, and think about the bigger picture behind it. Ask the question, who am I becoming? I like that a
Hmm.
lot.
Yeah. And I think so much of it, really comes from taking the intentional step to have a vision for your life of who you want to
Taking the what?
become. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Just taking that intentional step to say, man, what is the vision that I have for my life? There's a missionary in California, and I've heard him say before, he'll say, everybody asks me, what do I want to be doing in 5 years? I wish a lot more people would ask me, who do I want to become in 5 years? And that's kind of that really stuck with me of saying,
Yeah.
the only way you're answering that question is if you're taking time to really just have a vision for your life and say, man, who is the person that I want to become? What do I feel like God has called me to do? Because it can be so easy to just get so caught up in the grind of life because if we're just being honest, um, it can take a lot to, take care of the house, pay the bills, take care of your family, all that stuff. It can feel like a grind of just doing, 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 and we can just get so caught up in the doing that the doing in our life starts to dictate the becoming in our life. But I think the more maybe healthy mindset in all of that is to say, okay, I'm going to have an intentional vision for my life. And
Mm.
I'm going to start with the who do I want to become? And the becoming dictates the doing rather than the doing dictating the becoming. And so I know that's kind of a lot right there, but I think it can really, really be helpful for people if we do take the time to step back. And so, yeah, even recently, I have a note on my iPad where I'll take out my Apple Pencil and I'll start to write down some things of like, man, this is who I want to become. And I'll start to, for me, I always kind of think in circles. So I'll draw a circle and put my name and then draw some circles off of that of who I feel like the Lord is calling me to become. And then I'll just put down some easy action steps of here's some things that I'm going to have to do in order to become that person. And it's such a helpful exercise for me that even if I don't walk away from that exercise with just this huge revelation for my life, I walk away from doing that exercise saying, okay, I've reflected for a minute on just who I'm becoming. And that's a win in and of itself to reflect on who am I becoming and what are some goals I have in order to become the person I want to become and ultimately that I feel like God is calling me to become.
Yeah, man, it's just a great framework to use as far as like looking at the direction of the life you want to live. Um, and I think about, especially you being in the phase of, working with students and us not being too far detached from, being a student. I'd love to get your take on what you think are the biggest challenges that face, young adults that are kind of in this phase of life that are, building the foundation of their lives. What do you think the biggest challenges are that kind of deters young adults from really taking action on a faith of their own, and pursuing their own, spiritual growth and development?
Yeah. Yeah, there's kind of two things that come to mind for me right away when you say that. I think the first one is um, the pace of life, especially here,
Mm-hmm.
living close to a big city. The pace of life can be so intense where I kind of alluded to it earlier, but just the demands on our time to fulfill all of our different responsibilities can be so intense. And the reality is that if we're going to grow deeper in our relationship with Jesus, is it's going to take time. Like we're going to have margin in our lives. And margin is not something that we talk about a ton because it's so easy just to fill up our schedules with the
Mm-hmm.
intense responsibilities and all the things that we have to do. And so I think the first biggest challenge is just the reality of the pace of life being so intense and having to take intentional steps to say no and to create margin in your life and able to really start practicing what it looks like to follow Jesus on a day-to-day rhythm of investing in our relationship with him and really becoming a more devoted follower of Jesus. So that's the first thing that comes to mind for me is just the pace is a challenge. And then I think the second thing that can maybe be a huge challenge for young people today when it comes to growing deeper in their walk with the Lord is just we have so many voices in our life that are always speaking to us, just lobbying for our time, lobbying for attention, and a lot of good voices, some maybe not so good voices. But really, we have to learn to what does it look like to listen to the voice of our Father above every other voice, to listen to the voice of God above all other voices, and saying, I'm going to let that kind of dictate the direction of my life rather than letting the voices that surround us each and every day really be the voices that I hear the most. I think the voice that we listen to the most will have the biggest impact on us and our decisions we make and how we choose to use our time. And so, yeah, to answer your question, the two things that come to mind for me at first that are just so prevalent today that are maybe making it a little bit harder to really make our faith our own for young people is the pace and the voices that surround us each and every day.
Yeah, that's awesome. When you talk about pace, there's a book that I'm about to read that I've heard a lot about, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. I think you've mentioned that you've read it before, right?
I have. Get ready to get wrecked. You're about to yeah, you're about to have a whole different look on pace. One of the it talks just about how hurry can rob us so much of growth in our formation and more into the image of Christ and in our relationship with God. And I mean, I know that's true for me. I just think about some mornings that you get a little bit behind because of could be something out of your control, could have been just because you hit the snooze button once or twice. I know people that listen to Take a Step do not hit the snooze button, so
Yeah.
I'm not talking to your people here.
Yeah,
But
if they do, they're not anymore.
yeah, not anymore. But yeah, and then it's like, man, I was planning on praying for however many minutes today, and it just turns into something super quick, and then that just kind of goes back to the whole pace thing of the reality is that if we're going to really grow in our walk with the Lord, it's going to take margin and it's going to take having a pace that's sustainable and give space for to really practice what it looks like to follow Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. I'm excited to read that one. And then
Yeah,
obviously,
let me know throughout it how it goes. I hope
yeah.
it impacts you as much as it impacted me.
Dude, there's people I know that have read it that just started sending like mass, like there's a guy we both know that we play college ball with, Craig.
Mm-hmm.
He finished it, and like following that, dude, he started making social posts. He started sending out emails and texts on like checking in on people, making sure they're like soaking up every like present moment in the day. So I've firsthand witnessed the how it's impacted other people. So I'm excited to read it. But
Yeah.
your other point on the voices, I mean, I think an important thing to reference with just the amount of voices that are lobbying for our attention is everything. There's always a tactic behind everything, especially in social media today, and usually money's at the root of it, right? So people say certain things, whether it could be with your faith, it could be with workout plans and diet plans. People say magnifying things to catch the attention because it draws attention, and attention produces a monetary result, right? Like people profit off of being able to capture attention. So I think that's a really good point to say, hey, be careful on just because someone has a big following, just because someone is in front of you on social media consistently, doesn't mean what they're saying is necessarily the end all be all. Like Shane said, I love the idea of being able to just filter out, like take everything with a grain of salt, but remember, the voice from Heavenly Father, the voice of God, and how do we hear that? We make time for Him. We pray. We go to the Word. Our pastor, I go to Woodstock City Church. Our pastor, Samer Masad, one of the things he says, which I love, is he says the Lord God will fill the space you make available for Him. So if like you talk about, filtering everything and focusing on the voice of the Lord, like I know so many people are like, how do I hear that? What do I do? And like people are like, the common answer is we'll read, pray. in essence, for me, it's make availability for him. Like if you make that availability, if you give him space, like why would you expect to hear something from God or hear a calling for God from God or him to point you in a certain direction when you won't even be intentional enough to make that space available for him to fill. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, I think, yeah, really what I'm kind of hearing you say is, I think about in every area of our life, we know we have to invest in it in order to improve on it. And so,
Mm-hmm.
like, for example, if I were to tell you I wanted to run a marathon, and then you asked what I was doing to get ready for that marathon, and I said, oh, absolutely nothing. Like I haven't changed anything about the way I'm eating. I haven't changed. I don't run. I don't do anything. I'm just expecting to be able to run a marathon. You'd look at me like I was crazy and just be like, that's not going to work. Like you're not going to be able to run a marathon if you're not making steps intentionally um, to be able to do that. And I think the same way, like in our relationship with Jesus and growing as Jesus followers, we can't expect just to one day wake up as just this wise, fully devoted follower of Jesus, person of love, all of those things just because time went by. Um, and along the way, the Holy Spirit works in us, and ultimately, spiritual transformation isn't something that we do. It's something that the Lord does to us, something that the Holy Spirit does inside of us. But it's still the invitation for us to put forth effort into it. I love what Dallas Willard, he's an author that I love to read, and one of the things he says is, grace is not opposed to effort. Grace is opposed to earning. And really what he's getting at there is it's okay to put forth effort into our relationship with Jesus. We should make the space for it. We should have the rhythms and the practices in our life in order to really orient our life around the person of Jesus and ultimately with the goal of being more and more formed into Christ likeness and being that person of love, that person that looks like Jesus if he were walking in your shoes today of what would it look like to be a Christ-like formed, loving, caring, compassionate, kind, humble follower of Jesus today. And it takes effort along the way in order to become that person.
Mm-hmm. I love it. And I think I would be naive to think that everybody that is listening to this podcast is a follower of Christ. And I one question that I hear people try to answer and usually give pretty good answers, but in a very roundabout way. But one thing that I think would help out a lot for not only myself in helping to portray that to others, but also for those that might be listening that are questioning for themselves. So in the simplest way possible, I would love to hear you answer the question, why should I pursue a relationship with Christ?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question. And I think it's such a big question. But really, where my mind goes right away is that image we talked about earlier of a cornerstone. And the reality is that um, life can be so challenging, and um, God created us intentionally, and He has a design for our lives and a design for humans to flourish. And really, we step into that whenever we come into relationship with Jesus and start to follow Him and follow His ways of living. And so, if I were to simply ask that question of why should I pursue a relationship with Christ, I think you could get into just like why I believe the Bible is true. I think you could get into why I believe Jesus really did exist and die and resurrect 3 days later and ascend into heaven. Like there's the parts of it where it's just like I think it's true and I fully believe it. But there's also the part of it where it's just like I don't know that we can come to a place where life makes sense without saying I'm going to pursue a relationship with him and really put him at the center of my life. And that doesn't mean just like trying to become a better person. It really means saying, I'm going to let Jesus, and I'm going to be reborn and to become a whole new creation because I start to follow Jesus and the Holy Spirit comes inside me and starts to change everything about who I am. And so following Jesus, it's not just something we do, but it changes who we are. And um, this life can be so hard, and so many things can come up that are unexpected. And ultimately, we need a cornerstone in our life that is unchanging, that is always going to be there, strong enough to hold all of the things we're going through. And I found that that can only be found in the person of Jesus. So I don't know if that was really the straightforward answer you were looking for. I felt like it was pretty roundabout, but it's something that I know I'm just so passionate about. It's just, yeah, really living my life in a way where I believe that the gospel is the greatest news ever told, and really living my life in a way where more and more people start to experience the true life that's only found in Jesus, because ultimately there's just not an abundant life. There's not true living designed the way God wanted us to live apart from him. And so that's
Yeah.
why I would say it's important to pursue a relationship with Christ.
Yeah, and in hearing you say that, like I'm starting to like understand why you never get like a one sentence answer out of it, because typically when you ask someone that question who has been born again and has experienced life before Christ and after Christ, it is so hard to consolidate everything down, because you have all of these experiences and these feelings and these emotions that you felt, and that in the presence of God that you felt. Man, it's like you just want to like run on a rabbit trail behind like every experience you have and how he's changed your life.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes a lot of sense to me, is like when people ask me that, man, I want to start with like, man, this is the kind of person I was. This is like the experience I had. And I don't have this like life-changing story. It's actually something I kind of struggled with for a while in sharing my story, but it's kind of a side story. But I think it's so hard to consolidate everything down. That's why you get these like long-winded answers, because people are just like, when you ask someone who's on fire for the Lord, they're waiting for someone to ask that so they can just explode with like how great God has been to them, what he's done for them, the grace and mercy that he's shown them, and the effects that's had on their lives. That kind of comes to mind when I
I
think of
definitely
that.
get what you're saying for sure. And I think, yeah, ultimately, the answer to that question for me is just centered around the person of Jesus. That, yeah, I why should you pursue a relationship with him? Because he really did live, and he really did die for you and I, and he really did resurrect 3 days later. And that really is just the greatest news ever told. And it's true, like it actually happened. And
Yeah.
that changes everything for me.
Yeah, I heard another thing. I heard Sam or a pastor say one time. It was actually because I lead a small group in our high school ministry at the church, and we were at a conference over the summer last summer, and he was like building up to this one question, was essentially answering that question. He may have worded it a different way, but it was essentially like, why do we believe? What do I believe? What do I believe? And he built up this entire message to it, and then when he answered it, he said it in such a simple way that I will take forever. He was like, why do I believe what I believe? Why do I place my faith in Jesus? Because Jesus didn't stay dead. And like that, and then just like such a simple, straightforward answer. But that holds so much weight. It was like at the end of the day, like if Jesus, if there was no resurrection, if Jesus stayed dead, then he would have been another rabbi that performed miracles. But instead, he predicted and pulled off his own resurrection. And for me, in the most simplest terms possible, Jesus didn't stay dead, so I choose to follow him. So that I thought that was a pretty cool, straightforward answer.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
Awesome. So just kind of as we kind of continue moving through the podcast, one thing I wanted to ask you, and because through Take a Step, one of my purposes and mission, and one of the main mission I have behind Take a Step is to help people uncover what their true purpose is, and take action, take that first step on that purpose, and then kind of take the next step and the next step, and let those steps pile up into ultimately reaching the end result that they want. And I think a huge component that deters people from taking that first step is the fear, the judgment, the paralysis by analysis of, what if this doesn't happen and this doesn't happen, or, this is wrong with me, or whatever it is. I think it's so easy to let all of those factors play a role in, delaying the process, distracting you from the process, and ultimately just never starting. And one thing I wanted to ask you, because I have such a, tremendous amount of respect for you and your pursuit in the ministry, is obviously stepping foot into the ministry requires, getting in front of audience, public speaking, and capturing the attention of the audience. And, for you growing up, knowing that you wanted to be in ministry, but at the same time, knowing that you have a lisp, I'd love to hear kind of what your mindset was behind, knowing that you had this calling, that this is what you wanted to pursue. But that for most people, that would be a very easy thing to say. I don't know, like it's going to be hard. Like, people are going to judge me. I may not be able to get their attention. I'd love to hear your mindset on that, on just like being able to, say, I don't care. I know this is my calling, and I'm going to take action on it anyways.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, growing up, I do remember being insecure about the way I talked every now and then. I remember, doing some of like the speech therapy classes. I remember things like that. I remember doing like a presentation in class one time where I had the thought of like, oh, I want to try to use words that don't have S's in them so that people maybe won't know that I do struggle with that or whatever. And it kind of goes back to my junior year of high school, that story I was telling you earlier. Somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, I just feel like the Lord's telling me that you're going to be a voice." And as I was processing that and thinking through it and stuff, I thought, wow, it sounds like it would be something God would do, that he would take something that maybe I feel insecure about and really use that to leverage my life for his fame and for his glory and for his renown. And so, yeah, I mean, dude, honestly, it eventually came to a place where it was like, I'm just going to operate off of this calling that I feel like is upon my life. I'm going to be obedient to what's in front of me. And if my obedience to the Lord results in me speaking in front of people, then I'm not going to worry about something that's maybe outside of my control. I'm just going to be faithful to it. And I've had a few people ask me just about that throughout just the few years I've been doing ministry. And a lot of times I've just seen that the Lord has used something that, I was insecure about, to further his kingdom, to further his name, to further his renown. And so really, I think it just goes back to operating from a place of calling, operating from a place where you feel like God's, called you to be in that season. And whatever comes from it is really up to him. Obedience is my job. And then the results, I'm just happy to leave up to him. So, that's what comes to mind when you ask that. It's got to a place now just where I've been doing it for a minute, where I don't think about it all that much, but really just reminded of the Lord's faithfulness and what he's called me to, and just how he's redeemed something for his glory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's powerful to people, that people can take and use in, whatever hardships or setbacks or things that they might be going through that they think are holding them back from kind of getting them to where they want to go. Is, maybe God's molding something in you. Maybe God's molding a mindset. Maybe God's molding a specific trait that you may not see yet, or may not have clarity on yet, but will see down the road. Like for me, I talk about that with my size growing up. Like I was a very, very small kid, didn't grow and hit puberty till later on, really into high school. And I always was just like, why me? Like, why do I have to sit back and watch all of my friends grow and develop? And athletics was part of my identity growing up. So that was a huge challenge. And a verse that I read a couple years ago that resonated so much with that point, and kind of what you're talking about with God using those things and bringing about a certain result. But in Genesis 50, I believe it's Genesis 50:20, Joseph comes face to face with his brothers again. His brothers sold him off. They were jealous of him, sold him off into slavery. Years later, they come face to face with Joseph, and he has worked his way up to be at a significant authoritative position. They come face to face and like, what happened? Like, this is crazy. And they were like apologetic. And he looked at his brothers and said, what you plan for evil, God used it for good to bring about the present result. So not saying it's evil, but it's hardships, it's the challenges that may seem like evil in your life, that may seem like hardships and trials. Maybe God's taking that to use it for good, to mold a specific trait so that he can bring about a present or a better result, or the result that you might be looking for in your life later on. So I love that.
Yeah, and I think there's just so much power in like being vulnerable with those things, like a lot of times we can be tempted or think that we need to kind of hide maybe what we perceive as our weaknesses from people. But really what I've noticed is the more and more we're vulnerable and willing to open up about who we are and just the way that we're wired and things like that, oftentimes like taking that one vulnerable step can start to lead to breakthrough. And
For sure.
I think that's something that maybe I've learned a little bit throughout this journey.
Love it, man. Well, Shane, man, I've thoroughly enjoyed this episode. I think I've taken a ton out of it personally, and I know our audience, especially will take so much out of it. I think it's really cool to have conversations like this, just to be able to showcase, I think the concept of faith is very daunting for a lot of people. And it's hard, like you just said, to be vulnerable with that conversation. And I think the more you can talk about it, the more you can present it as just our current reality, makes it a lot easier for people to digest and think about for themselves. So I appreciate you coming on, and I hope you got as much out of this episode as I have.
Yes, 100%. Like I said, just honored that you would ask me to be a part of it. I love just cheering on what you're doing through Take a Step, and encouraged by not only this conversation, some of the other stuff you've released as well, and just grateful to get to be a small part of it today, and also just love catching up with you and hanging out.
Yeah, 100%. Well, go ahead and let the people know where they can find you. I know you're just kind of a wealth of information on the topic of faith and the topic of just living a servant-filled life. And I think you put out some great content and have developed a solid following off of that I think the Lord has blessed you for. But let the people know where they can catch up with you and where they can follow along with what you're doing.
Yeah, well, wealth of information sounds maybe, I don't want your expectations to be too high, but yeah, the best place just to track along with what we're up to is just to follow me on Instagram at Shane J. Smith, just the letter J, and then 2 H's on Smith, because Shane Smith is a pretty common name apparently. But yeah, you can follow me there, and I try to just kind of update what I'm learning and what we're putting our hands to in this season, and just the things that are taking up our time. So that would be the best way to connect with me.
Awesome. Well, Shane, it's been a pleasure. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Take a Step podcast. If you like the information, if you like, what we're promoting here, please give us a rating or and review, whichever platform you're listening on. If you're on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. Let's keep growing this community, growing the brand so that we can continue making an impact and just changing more lives for the better. So Shane, thanks for joining. Guys, we will talk to you in the next episode.